Mirage, I'm back. Salute. Just want to welcome all the ladies and gentlemen to another classic in the Midnight Mirage. So it's been a while since we've made a tape here. Hopefully everybody has been peaceful, and hopefully everybody has been ascending and succeeding in their personal lives. All right. What we're gonna do in this tape is we're gonna talk about the astrological and spiritual influences of Jupiter. Um, since we all want to ascend in life, we all want to succeed certain things. So we'll talk about that. Me personally, these influences have been very, very powerful over my life these last few months. And the reason why I've been gone is because I've been putting in a lot of work in my personal life. So there has been a Saturn-Jupiter complex going on in my personal life. All right. And what we'll do is read into a book I have called Saturn, A New Look at an Old Devil. And we will talk a little bit about the relationship between Saturn and Jupiter. And I don't want to spill the beans too much, but what we'll do right now is kind of go into the basics real quick. So as we all know, it's December. You know, we're closing out the year. We're in the season of Sagittarius, getting ready to go into Capricorn in the winter solstice. 2018 is getting ready to come to a close, going into 2019. So what my question to you is what did you achieve this year? What did you gain this year? What did you lose this year? Okay. I want us all to think about these things for a few seconds. I wanted you to think about what you achieved this year, what you gained this year, and what you lost this year. All right. I want you to think about the sacrifices that you had to make this year. All right. I want you to think about even some of the loved ones that you may have lost this year. All right. I also want to pause real quick, give a salute and shout out to all the brothers back in Riverdale, back home. All the brothers on the south side. Cause we had a soldier that, passed recently, so, spiritual energy to his family out there, you know what I'm saying, in California and out there in Georgia. Um, and one love to the squad, all them boys out there, they know who they are. So one love to y'all, man. Stay strong and, we're going to put on. All right. So salute and rest in peace to the brother AB. You all may have heard me mention AB before in the previous tape. I actually talked about AB before. It was on a tape I made a while back, a few years ago, about maybe 2 years ago, when I talked about King David, basically, and just a lot of courage and stuff like that and ascending. So what we'll also do in this tape real quick is use AB for a second. AB was basically the OG of the hood, growing up in Blackbeard's life. And although he was an OG of the hood, and he did some stuff that was, rather hostile, but a lot of it was street shit, and sometimes it's just how it go. But nevertheless, he always, inspired me to stay on the education route, basically. And the last time I talked to him, I can remember it was back in 2009. I was on winter break from school, and I went and visited him, in jail and stuff like that when I went back home to Clayton County. And me and two of my boys, him and his younger brother, we just, long story short, went to visit him, and I was just talking to him and stuff. And that was actually the last time I saw him, man. And about a week ago, got some information that basically he had passed from a situation. So, but nevertheless, he was a good brother, and he was very, very Jupiter-like as far as his, what he used to tell me. He saw that I was good at the school shit, and he always told me to keep on grinding at that and ascending at that. So, also we'll pour a little bit of energy into the ether for the boy AB as well. So salute to him. So going back to this Jupiter energy, basically I want you to just think about 2018, man. What went right, what didn't go right, and what you want to see in 2019. Okay. So what I'm gonna do is read in this book, and what we'll do is just analyze shit as usual and keep this thing going. All right. And as I said before, the book is called Saturn: A New Look at an Old Devil by Liz Green. So I know we got some new people probably in the Midnight Mirage. I saw some of y'all in the comment section. So just wanted to give you all a thanks and just tell you welcome. So usually here in the Midnight Mirage, I'm gonna give you the name of the book during the tape. So as I just did here, the book that I'm reading out of is called Saturn: A New Look at an Old Devil by Liz Green. So if you're listening to the tape and you want to know exactly what book I was reading, I would prefer that you probably rewind it because I'm usually going to give it to you in the tape so you can go and do your own, your own research because I like for people to be accountable for their own studies and their own education. So I'm gonna do my due diligence to give you the source. So kind of just look out for that. All right. Also, too, like for everybody in the comment section, I apologize if I wasn't able to respond to all y'all, but nevertheless, I appreciate the love and definitely know I see y'all out there. Whether I see you physically, I definitely see you spiritually. All right. So I want to go into this reading and then we'll talk about some stuff. All right. Talk about how Saturn and Jupiter complex, influences you in your life and how with the discipline of Saturn and with the ascension and the higher mind and the influx of inspiration from the higher mind that Jupiter provides you, this will lead to the success that we all want to see in 2019. All right. Just yesterday, I even got a fortune cookie that said that your preparation and your planning will lead to riches. All right. It told me that. It told me basically my preparation was going to lead to riches. All right. So a lot of us about to get some more success. And let's dig deeper into this Saturn and Jupiter shit so we can understand it. The combination of the great malefic with the greater benefic, it yet remains to be seen which is which, symbolizes the encountering of the two paths of concrete knowledge and experience with intuitive perception and faith. There are the two largest planets in the solar system and mark the dividing line between the personal planets, all of which deal with the urges of the personality and its threefold equipment of mind, feelings, and body, and the outer or higher octave planets, all of which have some connection with the urges of the collective unconscious, or the soul and the group life of which man is a part. So real quick, all the planets all up into Saturn. So that means that the Sun, Mercury, the Earth, the Moon, Venus, Mars, um, all up until Saturn basically. These planets are all personal. So as we see right here, it says the dividing line in the solar system between the personal planets. All those personal planets deals with the urges of the personality, all right, and how these unfold in the mind, the feelings, and the body, all right. But then you have the higher octave planets or the outer planets, all right, such as like Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. And all these planets deal with some type of connection and urges with the collective unconscious or the soul group, which man is a part of, all right? So if you want to understand astrology a lot better, just think of all the planets up until Saturn as the personal planets, okay? They deal more with your mind, body, and spirit, or mind, body, and emotions, rather. More personal, more dealing with your individual I or your individual ego, okay? Your individual, self. And Saturn usually is what is the boundary to keep that individual self contained, all right? So you can, experience life as an individual. But once you start going beneath the veil of Saturn, then you start going a little more into the collective and the individual ego or what you perceive yourself as, as an individual, that starts to fizzle away, believe it or not. All right. So let's continue. Jupiter and Saturn represent the bridge between the higher and lower levels of consciousness. Any combination of the two, natally or in synastry, offers an opportunity for through the intuitive faculty Jupiter may be perceived at last the shadow or the dweller. So in astrology or in a lot of mythos, usually you will see the relationship of Jupiter and Saturn. And as I'll read a little bit in a minute, you all have heard the mythos of Zeus and Kronos. All right, this is also Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter representing the great benefic, Saturn representing the great malefic. All right, also dealing with the left hand and right hand of the tree of life as well. So Jupiter is on the right hand side of the tree of life, the fourth sphere of mercy, and Saturn is on the left hand side of the tree of life, the third sphere dealing with um, Bina, which is I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So continuing on, cross context of Saturn with the personal planets affect two individuals primarily on the personality level, although the person whose Saturn is involved also has the opportunity to reach a new level of self-understanding through contact. Together, Jupiter and Saturn can provide to both people the necessary qualities for passage into a more expanded field of awareness, knowledge, and wisdom. So this complex of Jupiter and Saturn is going to, expand you into knowledge and wisdom. And of course, when you obtain and absorb more knowledge and wisdom, you apply that, all right? And when you apply that, that leads to different forms of success. Now, typically, we have people out here who want economic success, but everybody isn't looking for economic success. Some people are looking for health success. So we got some people out there in the Midnight Mirage that may have some type of physical, emotional, spiritual, or mental ailment going on. Maybe they got a family member, or maybe it is the person listening to this, and spiritual healing to those people, but they need that. You got some people that need maybe relationship and emotional and romance. Maybe some people in the Midnight Mirage that being isolated, maybe it's kind of getting to them a little bit. And maybe they some good people and they just want to connect with somebody. You got some people like that out there. So nevertheless, whatever it is you deem as success, this Jupiter Saturn complex, will help you. Now, when you think of these planets too, I don't want you all to necessarily just think about these large celestial objects in the sky. However you choose to think about it is on you. But to make it real simple, just look at it as a energy. Okay, look at it as energies, and look at it as certain dimensions or certain levels of your own mind. All right. Basically, what I'm getting at is imply it internally. Okay, continuing going. So as I said before, that Jupiter and Saturn usually shows up in mythology as well. So let's look a little bit into that one. In mythology, Jupiter was the child of Saturn, who swallowed most of his offspring whole because of his fear that they would do to him what he had done to his own father Uranus. Only Jupiter was saved and hidden in a cave, while a stone wrapped in a blanket was offered and accepted as a substitute. At the appointed time, when Saturn disgorged the lot because he could not digest the stone, Jupiter seized control and locked his father in Tartarus, the darkest region of the underworld, under the guardianship of Pluto to keep him out of mischief. From the depths of Tartarus, the myth tells us, Saturn still howls and bangs on his bars, demanding release. For like the other gods, he is immortal and cannot die. So if most of you out there are familiar with our indigenous ancestors, known as the Etruscan, Minoan, Cretan, Athenian, Greek, or whatever it may be, around the Mediterranean Sea and here in America. But nevertheless, if you are familiar with Greek mythology goes into how Saturn and Uranus had the battle, where Saturn actually castrated his father Uranus, okay, and cut off his procreative gland. And then, the way the mythos goes, usually the father is always afraid that his son is going to do to him what he did to the previous one. So Saturn killed his father Uranus, and then Jupiter came and basically killed his father Saturn. All right. And when I say killed, I don't really mean killed, but basically locked it up, because they all are just forms of energy. And the mythology is just trying to show you how they have a relationship with each other. Also, too, it plays into the Heru, or the Heracles, or the Yeshua mythos as well, because Jupiter also represents the Christ. So all of us that are familiar with the Aleister Crowley work and are familiar with the different forms of Heru, Harpocrat, Rahar-Q, etc., believe it or not, these are also different reincarnations of the child star, which is Jupiter, okay? Which is the child Christ Jupiter, all right? So Jupiter also represents the child Christ, okay? Jupiter also represents the child Christ, all right? So continuing on, I just want y'all to understand the mythos. So also when it says right here that Jupiter was saved and hidden in a cave, and then a stone was given to Saturn instead, because Saturn was eating up all his kids. This is the same mythos of Yeshua when he was hidden in Egypt when King Herod was trying to kill him. It's the same mythos as Moses when he was sent down the river when the evil Pharaoh was looking to kill all the Hebrews. It's the same mythos of Heru when his father Osiris killed, and Set is looking to, capture and basically take out him as well. So, you see that repeated theme of how the Christ is associated with um, the astrological celestial energy of Jupiter. All right. And also, too, if you want to know where Saturn dwells, Saturn actually dwells under the abyss of the underworld, which is ruled over by Pluto. Okay, so think about how in the mythos that Jupiter or Zeus and Pluto or Hades were actually working together to fight against the Titans, which represents Saturn, and they had them locked up in Tartarus, all right, which represents the underworld, and Pluto or Hades rules over all that. All right, so just showing you how the mythos, ties in together. So keeping going, we know now that mythology has great psychological relevance as well as being entertaining, and this myth is characteristically rich in symbolism on several levels. A little study may reveal that the relationship between Jupiter and Saturn is nicely stated in the allegorical form here in terms of the growth of the human soul. It is important that this deeper aspect of the contact be considered, for if we interpret cross aspects like these in a wholly superficial manner, we are missing the significance for the major opportunity which is offered for personal growth. Every situation contains something which can be utilized for growth, and none more powerfully than a relationship between two people. All right. So now what I want to do is go into how Jupiter represents the higher mind. All right. Because I'm pretty sure it may talk about this part. Um, yeah, it's gonna talk about it, but we'll go into how Mercury represents the concrete mind or the personal mind, and Jupiter represents more of the cosmic mind. So in astrology, remember how I say you have the lower octave on a personal level, and then you have the higher octave. So when it comes to the mental or your mind, Mercury rules the lower octave. Your personal mind, your ego, your sense of self, etc. But once you start going beyond that and start transcending into the higher mind, that's ruled more by Jupiter. All right. All right. Let's go into this reading. Jupiter believes instinctively and without intellectualization, in the positive outcome and beneficent aid of those qualities and situations represented by his sign and house placement. Not only has he always been in abundance of these things, he continues to expand and attract a greater abundance, for his faith vindicates itself. It is also not blind faith, but rather an inner knowing based on the intuitive perception of the whole, which guarantees to him, although he may not understand the details, a positive outcome and meaning of his own life. More than any other fiery planet, Jupiter is synchronous, with Jung's concept of the intuition, that faculty of consciousness which permits the perception of the overall meaning of things, the cause behind the effect. Jupiter has also been linked with the image making faculty, the powers of visualization and fantasy. These faculties are primary means of perceiving symbols, which are the language of the unconscious self. It is said that people who come strongly under Jupiter and Sagittarius are lucky, and they certainly appear to be, but rather than luck, it is an inner acceptance of the positive outcome of any situation, an unconscious understanding of the meaning of that situation, and a capacity to visualize what they wish to experience in such a way that they shape it themselves. So let's go through this real quick. So, like I say in astrology, Jupiter represents the spiritual fire of the mind. So your mind starts to be influenced by this deep aspect of and this deep understanding and this deep knowing. When you start to be inspired and you start to take real big gambles and big risks. And when people ask you, well, where are you getting this sense of knowing from? Like, how are you so sure this is gonna happen? And you just say, man, I just know, or man, I got the faith that this gonna happen, or man, I saw this in a dream, or man, I got the vision, or man, all we got to do is this. I know it. Just trust me. When you start feeling and thinking that, and you getting that those fiery thoughts in your mind, that is the spiritual influence of Jupiter. All right. So as it says right here, Jupiter is not blind faith, but rather an inner knowing based on the intuitive perception of the whole, which guarantees to him a positive outcome in the meaning of his whole life. More than any other fiery planet, Jupiter and the faculties of consciousness, which permits the perception of the overall things, meaning of things. Here's the part I meant. Excuse me. It says Jupiter has also been linked with the image making faculty, the powers of visualization and fantasy. So when you fantasizing, and you starting to see yourself, however you see yourself. Like I say, if you see yourself healthy, if you see yourself passing your final exam, if you see yourself, getting in a new relationship, if you see yourself starting your new business, if you see yourself getting in shape, whatever it is, this deeper, complete picture that's being shown to you is coming from the higher collective consciousness of Jupiter. All right. So let's continue on. Check this out. Jupiter is a natural threat to an unconscious Saturn who fears the qualities of Jupiter's sign and house because he has been hurt by the lack of them. He is reluctant to take any risk without having a tangible guarantee of the eventual success of his efforts. The usual mundane effect of this interaction is that Saturn attempts to dampen Jupiter's enthusiasm, punch holes in his confidence, replace his optimism with caution, and check the flow of his intuitive acceptance of meaning. Jupiter can be prodigal planet and governs excess. We have only to examine the myths of his escapades to get some idea of the complete irresponsibility of his nature. It is to be expected that Saturn's reaction to what he deems wastefulness and recklessness is disapproval of a rather old maidish kind. Jupiter finds Saturn unduly pessimistic and overcautious rather, and frequently an impossible bore because there is a lack of spontaneousness in Saturn's nature. To even a more sensuous Jupiter, the good things in life are a man's right because life itself is essentially meaningful and positive and full of opportunity. To Saturn, the painful things of life are a man's natural lot, and any happy or bright periods are ephemeral and without meaning unless they have been earned through great effort. So right here is showing you how Jupiter and Saturn polarize each other. All right. So if you ever have those two, like I'll give you an example right now. Like Blackbeard, Blackbeard, he's an accountant, okay? And the guy that I do the accounting for, me and him really represent Saturn, Jupiter, all right? Now the brother I do the accounting for, he's basically like, he's like a celebrity superstar type of guy. So when his money's rolling in, it's a lot of stuff that he may want to go and buy. But then me being Saturn, the disciplinarian, the one putting the restrictions on excess spending, then I come in and say, nah, bro, we don't need to do X, Y, and Z. So even in that little relationship, you can see a Jupiter Saturn going on. All right. So it says right here that sometimes that the Saturn energy can have you reluctant to take any risk without having a tangible guarantee of eventual success of the efforts. So if you have some of those people that say, well, I don't want to really take the risk because I don't know if this is going to work, or man, I need to know if I'm getting paid for this, or man, I need to know if this is worth my time or whatever, or man, what am I going to get out of this? If you around somebody that's caught up into that, then this is a person that probably is a little too polarized on Saturn's energy, and they actually need to balance themselves out with a little more Jupiter energy. They need to be a little more intuitive and rely more on that inner child and rely on more those inner visions of the possibilities of what could come. So even if they necessarily don't have all the evidence and all the proof right now, it doesn't mean it can't happen. All right. And then the same, you may have a person that's too confident and the person that believe that everything may work out, and the person that always count money before it come in. A person that before the business deal is complete, they already thinking that everything is good, so they already spending money. This is a person that's a little too Jupiter, and they need to balance themselves out with a little more Saturn energy. So clearly, when you understand how these energies work, you see how you have to have both of them, because you can't have just one or the other. You got to have both to balance themselves out. So although I'm an accountant and I do have my Saturn side of, the discipline and the restriction and the saving, there still is a Jupiter side to where after we budgeted and all the money come in, that niggas finna ball out of control, the stupid whips, the mansions and all that type of shit. So it has two sides to it, but that's the balance of it. If you too Saturn, then you're not going to enjoy life. But if you're too Jupiter, you're gonna be broke, and basically that'll be how you don't enjoy life. So, too much of one ain't good. You gotta have both balanced out. All right. Um, let's see. Yeah, check this out. We'll read this. This is an interesting contact to be found between two people. It is sometimes synonymous with spiritual or religious differences between people, although it will sometimes also affect the more earthly levels of finances. But Jupiter, like Mercury, is a planet of the mind, ruling what is termed the upper mental plane or plane of creative thought, while Mercury is given rulership of the lower mental plane of creative or of concrete thought, excuse me. It is interesting to note that one of the esoteric teachings of the subject of rebirth is that when the personality dies and the temporary vehicle of the body, the emotional nature, and the concrete or rational intelligence are dissolved at the end of an incarnation, the higher mental body or capacity for its vision remains, for it is a permanent attribute of the soul. For this vision, excuse me, for this rather abstruse concept, it may be seen that Jupiter has very little to do with the personality and its life in the physical world. He is the first touch of the soul, seen through symbol and vision, which leads eventually to the battleground of Saturn. So remember how I was telling you all a little earlier that Mercury and Jupiter have a relationship because they both represent the two polarities of your mind. All right, so your concrete mind, or your basically your, I'll say your daytime consciousness or the ego, that's ruled by Mercury. All right, but when you start having these higher thoughts and stuff like that, this is when Mercury is starting to be influenced by the fire of Saturn. I mean, the fire of Jupiter, rather. Excuse me. All right, the fire of Jupiter. Let me see. Yeah, we're gonna read this last part right here and then wrap it up. Like the figure of mythology, Jupiter wins any battle which may ensue because of his natural authority, that of the inner man. This is not a particularly common contact in relationships because neither of these planets deal directly with the personality. Their tie is connected with the broader, more abstract area of the ideals and the development of wisdom. Nevertheless, it is an important contact because it is the tie of the teacher and the student in the ways and lessons of life, belief measured against experience, first, and inner or subjective experience, measured against outer tangible experience later. The student eventually, if he masters his lessons, will outgrow and instruct his teacher to the benefit of others, or excuse me, of both. But the roles shift and each one learns from the other. So what this is saying is that Jupiter and Saturn represent the teacher and the student also. Because think about how, Saturn is the old teacher and Jupiter represents the young child. The young child hasn't really experienced a lot of the things that they've seen in dreams, but they know that these things are real, and they constantly always talking about them, always telling the teacher about these things. And the teacher, they know that these things have possibilities of coming true because of what they've seen through experience. But because of their life experience, they know that some things happen and some things don't. So they're gonna always teach that child Jupiter to not count the things before they actually show up. So in this, both of them actually learn from each other because the child is gonna learn, okay, yeah, I get these Jupiter visions, but I have to have a Saturnian approach to let these things materialize so I can actually experience them. And then the Saturnian one will realize, okay, yeah, things have to materialize, but I don't have to always be so strict in my mindset and think that, okay, I don't want to, acknowledge something before it gets here. Maybe I can open up my mind to the possibilities of things that haven't shown up yet. All right, which is a certain Jupiter way of thinking. So either way it goes, um, going into your higher self, man, it represents, um, you acknowledging your more Jupiter, visions, your dreams and shit like that. Um, for example, I was walking a little bit earlier today and I found a green and white poker chip on the ground. And I'm actually holding it in my hand right now. I could put it on the screen, but it really doesn't matter. But I found, well, do y'all hear that? But anyway, that's the little green and white poker chip. But I was walking and I found it on the ground, and as soon as I found it on the ground, my hands started fiery itching. I mean, it was burning itching. And I picked it up and I found it to be peculiar. And I continued to walk on, but nevertheless, that's that Jupiter energy. Okay, so it's no coincidence that I didn't make no tape in a long time, and something inspired me to start making them again. And here we go with the first one, because it wasn't like I wasn't gonna make anymore, but sometimes you gotta pull back and pour into yourself and advance yourself. And then I had to sit back and watch too. Watch the natural environment, watch how people were reacting to stuff I put out there. Let some people catch up to the stuff that I had already put out. And just grow and glow as usual. But nevertheless, here we are. So this Jupiter shit is real, man, and just want to drop this on y'all and want y'all to allow these forces really to take over y'all's lives, and lead to y'all success. Because it's all coming from within. You know, it's all coming from within. So acknowledge your emotions and your higher thoughts, because this is the key to you achieving whatever it is that you want to do. Um, and also too, you got to keep away from negative people. Um, Keep away from negative people in your life. You know what I'm saying? Really only fuck with folks that really got love for you, man. Family and friends. People that you done been in the mud with, and people that have proven themselves to you and stuff like that. Always show love and keep it 100 with those people, because as they here and then they gone. You know, so always show appreciation, man. And as usual, we're gonna continue this Midnight Mirage shit. And I appreciate everybody that's been being patient, and just fucking with these tapes, man. And you know, y'all shout me out in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. But stay tuned for the next one. And I'm out.